All right, let's get to the Washington Commanders. So the Commanders have 67 million in effective cap space as of right now. Draft picks they have 6, but just 2 in the top 140. They have picks 7, 71, 145, 186, 197, 224. So not a lot of draft capital to work with. Those picks went to, obviously getting Laramie Tunsil, Deebo Samuel. I think Marshawn Lattimore's trade is still paying some dividends or lack thereof um, in these picks. But they get 6 picks, and picking one in the top 10 will be helpful. Current roster for Washington. Things got rough last year, no doubt. Injuries to Jaden Daniels, lack of defensive consistency slash identity, age all over the roster, and dissension in the coaching slash management ranks. But the roster is actually still kind of in decent shape, and we have a lot of cap space. We have several free agents who were on second or third units last year, but a lot of our best starters are still locked in to contracts on the team. We have our quarterback, our wide receiver one, 4/5 of our offensive line starters, plus 2 decent depth pieces that can start if need be. A couple defensive tackles and 2 young corners that we like anywhere to from fine enough to a lot. The best free agents we'd consider retaining are all guys we might let walk in an effort mostly just to get younger. Zach Ertz coming off of that big injury, Von Miller, Bobby Wagner, and Deebo Samuel. Um, Ertz, we would like let him just kind of go out and recover. I'm sure he's not signing anywhere until that knee is fully recovered. It might not even be until after the season starts, and we'll monitor that situation for sure. Um, Bobby Wagner will finally let walk, so we can really focus on nailing down that position for the long term, like a way we haven't in a while. Um, Debo is someone we're genuinely interested in bringing back since he'd likely be in the second or third tier free agent wide receiver, so he shouldn't cost too much money. Von Miller would be fine for cheap as well for depth, but we still need a true piece at edge. And then to create additional space outside corner, Marshawn Lattimore, strong cut candidate. We'd save an additional 18.5 million cap space, but it just hasn't worked out. We traded for him. Injuries, poor play. I know we need corners. I know we already have cap, but it might just be a opportunity where both sides are like, hey, this didn't work out. Let's walk away and both try to move on to something better. Um, Left guard Patrick Paul was last year's starter. He's a free agent. We could retain him as well. He played well enough. He probably wouldn't cost too much. Um, but we will, look at some other options or see what his price point is. We won't mind letting him walk if we need to, but we'll try to bring him back. Andrew Wiley, Nick Allegretti, Brandon Coleman are all fine backup options. If we had to plug any of those guys into guard for a season or for a short period of time while we get a mid round rookie ready, that sort of thing. In free agency, with our top needs being receiver, corner, edge, and linebacker, we'll look to address each of those. Along with bringing back Debo and maybe Von Miller, I'll look for a role player at wide receiver and then maybe a starting caliber edge rusher. We can and will make a run at slightly younger players like Jalen Phillips and Odafe Oweh, but I'm definitely kicking the tires on Trey Hendrickson. I know we want to get younger, and we will overall, but edge needs to be supercharged this year, and Trey is someone who can get over 15 sacks in 2026. So this maybe feels a little counterproductive to talk about getting younger, letting those guys walk that I did. But Trey at 32 and still playing good football. I know he was hurt last year, but that was also just a bad Bengals team. I'd be interested in bringing it in depending on the money. I'm also looking at corner. Jalen Watson and Greg Newsome are guys that first come to mind. If Dan Quinn is going to stick to zones and Durante Jones, being the new DC, is bringing some of that funky blitz stuff from Minnesota, I want zone cover corners who can have their head on a swivel. Newsome has played best in zone, and Watson comes from the Spags school in Kansas City, so he's used to adjusting and having all sorts of funky things happening all around him. So those guys I'm interested in. Tariq Woolen and Eric Stokes are also guys that kick the tires on, but I view them probably, at least Woolen, more as a man corner. And I do also like Roger McCreary, but we probably don't want 3 undersized corners all out there at the same time, even if they're all pretty good. So Newsome and who's the other guy I said? And Jalen Watson are definitely our priorities. At linebacker, I have a lot of options, but again, I want to get younger. So that narrows my pool. There's a lot of veteran over 30 linebackers, but linebackers specifically, I want to be in the younger age group on. So Leo Chenal would be a really fun fit in a Minnesota style defense, even if he's a little redundant to a Frankie Louvu. I'm sure the Packers are going to pay Quay Walker, but I might be willing to jack up the price and make them pay a little bit more if it means a chance of getting him. Devin Lloyd, Nakobe Dean, they're also pedigree guys who got better over the years. Christian Harris also dealt with injuries in his time in Houston. He kind of fell out of that rotation with all those linebackers, but he's a guy I'm looking to take a swing on. My goal is to sign two of those guys and just see who kind of sticks and comes to camp, plays well, or emerges out of it. In the draft, with the seventh pick, I'm taking the best defensive player available, preferably one of the edge rushers. Vel Reese, I should say, Ruben Bain, Sonny Styles, David Bailey, Caleb Downs. It's tough to have as few picks as we do where we have them, but that pick in particular is in a good spot for us this year to get one of those guys. At 71, I'm looking at receiver. With all that attention I've paid to the defense so far through this process, I needed another swing at a young guy to catch the ball. Pick your poison in that range. And you can tell me who your flavor is here. Maybe one ring down from the names we talked about with the Chargers: Jeremy Bernard, Antonio Williams, Jacoby Lane, Elijah Surratt, whoever. Then in my 4 day 3 picks, I'm looking for one young offensive lineman. Then back to the defensive well for depth. So Ben, you cover the Commanders extensively over on your channel with Robinson Fire. Again, shout out Pro Football Enterprises. Um, Talk to me about this plan for the Commanders and what you think.
Yeah, listen, the defense needs a lot of help. So does the wide receiver room. You mentioned all that. Let's talk finances here. Marshawn Lattimore, his 24 season was okay. There were some good games on there. His real struggles were that there were two games against very talented, bigger receivers that he struggled against, but the 24 season was okay. The 25 season was bad, and that was before the injury. The 25 season was really, really, really bad play by him. There's no other way to describe it. I can't speak for all Commanders fans, but I can speak for us too. It is time for Lattimore to go, and I don't care if we trade him or not. It is time to go. I mean, we don't even want him on the roster anymore at all. Not at a reduced rate, no rate, gone.
Nope.
I mean,
Mhm.
$18 million. It was really bad in 25, and now we also have the injury. Nothing against him personally, but just on field and business, we're done, man. And that's just that's based on him being a huge. He was supposed to be one of the leaders of the 25 defense. And instead, he was one of the reasons that it was so horribly, atrociously, abominably bad, and including about a 4 or 5 week stretch there where they almost literally hindered nothing from a defensive standpoint. You know, you had the Lions and the Cowboys that just absolutely roasted them for, to the tune of 40 points. I mean, it was really bad. Another guy there is Deron Payne, who really needs to go. He's got like a $27 million cap hit. We can let him go and save about, I don't know, 16 $17 million right off the top, just straight up cut. Deron Payne is usually good for about 3.5 to 4 sacks, a season. And for defensive tackle, that's not bad, but it's not good either. He had 2 games at the start of the year where he played out of his mind. I mean, he was fantastic. We were like, wow, this guy is coming and he is ready. And then it all just disappeared, and it wasn't there. And we got a whole lot more of the Deron Payne we were used to. Basically, Deron Payne has had one tremendous season in his career, and the rest have all been very pedestrian. And, really, I don't see where he's worth $12 million, much less the 27 that they are slated to pay him. So, there's a guy there. I don't know if we could trade him for a seventh round pick, but I doubt it, honestly. That's just the way that's going to work. So as bad as the defense is, those two guys were supposed to be leaders and they weren't. I mean, they just did not get the job done. It's time to move on from those two guys. That will help us also get younger and it will free up, what is that, 16 and probably 17. That's a good $33 million in cap space that you can then, which by the way, free agency isn't what it was 10 years ago. We know that. You're not looking at difference makers. You are looking at guys who maybe they're plus side guys. Most of them. Most of them are actually solid starters, or hey, this is a really good rotational guy, is what you're getting in free agency. You have a handful of plus side and difference making kind of guys. It is small. So it's not like you're going to get drastically better in free agency necessarily, but at least you can get rid of a couple of expensive and vastly underperforming guys. So, those are two things that would certainly help everything you're talking about right there.
So if we, because Deron Payne, if you do that, now we have a whole defensive tackle as well. that we need to work because they have here are the three of their six listed defensive tackles on our lads are all free agents as well, and none of those guys are coming in and saving the day. One, so Johnny Newton is still there. Javon Kinlaw was a starter this year. Um, if we did that, we open up all this extra cap space. How do we edit this plan a little? Because I hear you, I totally hear. I think that makes sense. Similar for reasons of moving on from Lattimore. Do we then shift the plan from okay, try to spread it around a little bit in free agency to let's spend big on multiple edge rushers and in the draft instead of looking at one of those edge rushers primarily at seven. And obviously, like this always sounds easy, right? Trade back a couple spots and take Peter Woods, or even just take Peter Woods at seven, right? Do you draft a young defensive tackle that I didn't mention in the draft plan and spend money because the defensive tackle free agent class is not great. It's like nice role players. So all that word salad. Let me create a coherent question for you. Would you rather move on from Payne and sign like a nice mid-tier defensive tackle just to kind of fill the spot and then still draft a high upside edge rusher at seven? Like let's say you can get Ruben Bain. You get Ruben Bain at seven and you get I mean I can't even say like John Franklin Myers in good faith. I would need like a small step down from that. Let me try to pick one for you. Uh Doing this on the fly, doing this on the fly. Do 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 do. Let's say Greg Gaines, just because I've always liked him. I don't even know if he's good anymore. Greg Gaines. You just get like a name. You just get a dude at defensive tackle. Just a player, person, gray face, whatever. But he can start and he's not going to be a sieve. Would you rather do that and Ruben Bain at seven? Or would you rather spend huge on two edge rushers in free agency and take Peter Woods at seven?
I'd rather do either of those plans than to keep Deron Payne. I can't stress enough. Aside from the first two games, and I think there was a third game this year where Payne had a good half, and then there's another season out of Payne's entire career. That's the scope at which he has been, let's say, Pro Bowl level. That's
Mhm,
it. All the rest of the time, it's either average replacement level or it's rotation level. So we are not really creating a hole at defensive tackle any more than production level. So yeah, give me a $6 million defensive tackle in free agency. We are not hurting, and we've also got all this additional cap space to play. So that's the first thing. Get rid of Payne at that ridiculous, insane, garbage price tag. I mean, there's just no way. But to answer your more pointed question, yeah, the mood of the fan base, and I think of Dan Quinn, is they are desperate for an edge rusher, and that would be Bain or Bailey at seven. Absolutely. And then it's a good draft for defensive tackles, especially if you just get a run stopper. There's several guys there. So if the Commanders wanted to trade up into, somewhere around the 50 range, they could get a good run stopping defensive tackle to go along with, whatever $6 or $8 million defensive tackle that we pick up in free agency. But that's just got to happen, man. There's no sense we explored this in depth twice on the show. There is no sense to be had of having Deron Payne at $27 million. He
mhm,
he hasn't even played up to half of that amount,
mhm.
honestly.
All right, so move on from Bane. I would jack up the price on all those edge rushers if I'm Washington at this point. I mean, I would start at Jalen Phillips and Trey Hendrickson, like the top guys, and I would offer them annoyingly large amounts of money and just make everybody mad, including probably even Washington fans, to the point that they're like, we didn't want an edge rusher this bad. Like that's a lot. That's quarterback money that we're handing. I would do that, and then I would try to trade back a few spots. If somebody wanted to come up to seven to get, let's say, one of those receivers before Kansas City nabbed them at nine, or one of those edge rushers. They want to get one of those tier one edge rushers, and I could get Peter Woods in like the middle of the first round, sort of thing, and maybe pick up a another third or fourth round pick to try and bridge that gap of from 71 to whatever I said, that was 71 to 145. If I could bridge that gap somewhere, and get it like that's where I could get another run of the mill defensive tackle if I really wanted to expand on the depth. Um, yeah, that makes a lot of sense for Washington.